I'm Stephanie, and I'm a certified personal trainer.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist.
And this is a podcast dedicated to educating women on their journey to optimal health. There's so much that we can do to optimize our health, but we've talked to so many women who just simply don't know how.
These conversations are what inspired us to start OmniaFit. The OmniaFit podcast is all about interviewing certified professionals to educate women on improving our health. We'll talk about things like stress relief through exercise, what we need to know about our hormones, the truth behind fad diets, and more. So subscribe, follow along, and let us know if there are any topics you want to hear more about.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of OmniaFit. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Erin Ellis. She's a naturopathic doctor who specializes in hormones. So first in this episode, we're going to dive into exactly what she does, what a naturopathic doctor is, and then we're going to dive into why she specializes in hormones and why it's so important, especially for women. We're going to dive into how she works with women on things that we consider normal but are actually not normal, like period cramps, hormonal acne, chronic fatigue, all the things that a lot of us experience every single day or every single month, and they're not normal. We're going to talk about how meeting with a naturopathic doctor can help solve the root cause for these things instead of just taking a pill to put a band-aid over it. So without spoiling it anymore, we're going to dive right into the conversation and learn all about naturopathic doctors and how they can help with our hormones. Hi, Dr. Ellis. Welcome to our podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. First, to really get us started, I would love to hear a little bit about your background as a naturopathic doctor, why you got into it, what you're passionate about, just the whole spiel.
Yeah, well, it's really my second career. I didn't really start off being a naturopathic doctor. I worked in the bars and restaurants for many years. I went to University of Arizona in Tucson to go to medical school because I wanted to be a trauma room surgeon, but then I gave up on those dreams and realized that I really didn't want to be in school forever. So I quit that and got my degree in business and worked in the bars and restaurants for many, many years, but always knew that I could do and be more. I just never really figured out what that was. And then in 2010, it will be almost 12 years in February, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. I was 31 years old at the time, and the type of cancer I had was a very rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had a tumor by my bladder, and it was a pretty aggressive cancer. Most non-Hodgkin's lymphomas are. So it was like a whirlwind of a diagnosis, and immediately got started on treatment mid-February, and then I was deemed cancer-free in July of the same year. So I kicked the butt out of cancer. And during my journey, I learned a lot about health and wellness that I didn't really know. And I don't think it was anybody's fault. It's just it's a topic that a lot of us are naive to unless we do our own research or we seek out the information. It's not mainstream healthcare. And so I had learned a lot. And then I met a naturopathic doctor shortly after my diagnosis, and I'm like, what do you do? Like, I had no idea about this field of medicine, but was super intrigued, and it really aligned with what I was learning about health and wellness and how I could better optimize my health so that I never got cancer again, because I don't want that to happen again. And then come to find out, there was a school in Arizona about 12 minutes from where I lived at the time. And I went there, and just to see on a whim, like, what it would take for me to go back to school. I thought I was crazy. Like, maybe this was my midlife crisis. I don't know. But I only really needed 2 classes to get in. And because of all of my pre-med from wanting to be the doctor, years prior. And I said, okay, well, this is a sign that this is what I need to do. And I took those classes and refreshed my brain with a couple more. Just because it had been a while since I had been in school. I had been, out in the field working in the bars and restaurants. And then I got into 2013 and graduated 2017. And here I am today, like, helping people achieve their best health and living their best lives and trying to be their healthiest version. So it's freaking awesome.
Well, first, congratulations on beating cancer. That is always that deserves its own
Thank you.
Appreciation. Yeah. And then how cool to have found a naturopathic doctor and really have that open up your eyes, because that's music to my ears and why we started the podcast, because like you said, there's so many forms of healthcare that don't really seem to be mainstream, or they're up and coming, aren't really well known, but they're so beneficial and so helpful.
Right.
So I'd love to even just, if you could dive a little bit deeper into what even is a naturopathic doctor for those who maybe have heard the word like naturopathy, or, maybe heard the terms but don't actually know what it is.
Yeah. So there's a little stereotypical, maybe people don't really believe that we are doctors, and there are some naturopathic practitioners out there that aren't licensed to practice medicine. However, there are 7 or 8 different accredited schools that actually have their credentials to get your doctorate in naturopathic medicine to practice medicine. And the school in Tempe, Arizona, Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine is one of those. So I am licensed in the state of Arizona to practice medicine. But naturopathic doctors, we go through the same-ish 4-year medical degree program that medical doctors do. The first 2 years is all basic sciences like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry. And then the second 2 years of our coursework is all didactic work. And by didactic, I mean taking a class in, say, cardiology. So we'll learn how a medical doctor will treat high blood pressure, for an example, and then how naturopathically we can treat high blood pressure, whether that's through our different modalities that we are taught, which is first, do no harm. So we'll choose the least toxic and least invasive therapy that there is, and usually that's not a medication. We give the body what it needs to heal. We treat the whole person. That's probably my favorite one. Actually, they're all my favorite, but I love that one because I'm looking at the body as a whole. Because, for instance, high blood pressure, it's like, well, why do we have the high blood pressure? There's something else maybe going on. I'm not just going to target the cardiovascular system. Let's look at other things like thyroid, adrenals, hormones, things like that could be pushing the needle on the high range. What else? Prevention is a huge one. So many disease processes can be prevented if we can catch them early and give your body the nutrients to, fight off chronic disease. And then docere is another one, and docere means to teach. And so could be my favorite one too, just because I love teaching. Like I love doing things like this so I can share knowledge about my profession, what I do, and naturopathic medicine, and then teach people, because that's how I learned. I taught myself really about this field of medicine because I knew nothing about it. And I'm sure there's listeners now that know nothing about it, and they're hearing about this field of medicine for the first time. And, I had to craft my elevator pitch, as they call it, to make it really dumbed down, because when I told people like, oh, I'm a naturopathic doctor, they're like, huh? So you're a DO? I'm like, no, I'm an ND. Similar lines, but not the same thing. And they're like, oh, so you're a nurse? I'm like, no, like they just don't know. Yeah. So that is my goal, is, to be more present out there to share the field of naturopathic medicine. But like we take board exams, we take state boards, we do all of these different things just like medical doctors do to get that license. So it's similar in an extent. I think that we are smarter than medical doctors because we learn everything that medical doctors do, plus all of these other things like with, herbs and acupuncture and pain management and things like that medical doctors don't have the training in. So, and we think way outside the box. So I'm always that nagging toddler that's like, why is this happening? What is going on? I'm not like, oh, okay, here's a pill, take this, it's going to solve your problem. I'm like, what the frick is going on? Let's get to the bottom of this so it can get resolved.
Yeah, I love that, because it does seem that, especially in our Western society, that the pill's the problem to everything. I mean, yep. I got off birth control several months ago, and I started breaking out in hormonal acne, and I was seeing a dermatologist just to get my moles checked, and I asked her about it. She like the first thing she mentioned was putting me back on the pill.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be taking hormones. Right. Just personal preference.
Yeah.
But it was so quick to just prescribe the medication, but a lot of times they seem to be band-aid solutions, not, as you're saying, really figuring out, and kind of like you're the detectives of medicine, really figuring out what is actually happening, and maybe a pill to help subside symptoms or help along the way, but really figuring out what the true cause is. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Oh yeah, 100%. Like, again, why do you have the hormonal acne? So it's not like, oh, here's the pill that's going to fix it. It's fixing it. It's a Band-Aid. We're not getting to the root cause. You can't be on the pill forever. So you get off of it again, your acne is going to come back. So let's get to the root cause of why you have the acne so we can get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like it's a mixture of Western medicine, the
Hmm.
typical doctors, nurses that people always sound like they try to put you in the buckets of, but then bringing the thousands years of Eastern medicine into it as well, where they
Hmm.
practice herbs and even meditation. It can be a
Yeah,
prescription, technically, right? Like, just
absolutely. Oh yeah. Yep. There's a lot of that in there. Hmm.
I love it. I brought up my hormonal acne. That's just very
Hmm.
relevant for me. But you work with hormones a lot, right? Specifically in women, and that can be a cause
Yep.
of a lot of things.
Oh yeah. Hormone imbalance is huge, and that's my niche, if you want to call it that, is I help women fix their hormones. But more importantly, I am making them aware that there's an issue. I think a lot of women don't understand that things are abnormal because it's normal for them. So I point out, like, acne's not normal, debilitating cramps are not normal, wearing pads and tampons at the same time is not normal, like dreading your period every month is not normal. Like, these things are not normal, and some women are like, what? So yes, and fatigue, like debilitating fatigue where you're like, I could take a nap at any moment, that's not normal. So if we have these pain points, of what symptoms, then we're like, okay, it's likely some sort of hormone imbalance, and then I can dig a little deeper and figure out where that imbalance is and then fix it.
Which right there, I think, because that's something that I even just learned a few months ago that these things are not normal, but they seem to be because everyone talks about them.
Right. Or they talk about them as it is normal because so many people are suffering from it.
Right. So even I'm sure some people listening to this, their minds are going to be blown and, wanting to figure out what in the world,
Yeah.
how do I get it to stop? Every month it sucks.
Hmm.
So even taking a step back, could you just lightly explain even what are hormones? I think most of us know about testosterone, estrogen, but maybe it stops there. Could you lightly explain what they are?
Yeah, those are the ones that are most talked about. But we have a whole like endocrine system in our body. Like we have our cardiovascular system, our respiratory system, and our digestive system. And we have our endocrine system, and this is our hormone system from anything from our thyroid to our adrenals, which is our stress response, and then our reproductive hormones, so our sex hormones. So testosterone and estrogen fall in the reproductive category along with progesterone, LH, FSH, ovulation, DHEA, like those are some common ones in the reproductive category. And then we've got the whole thyroid panel, because your thyroid is a little butterfly gland in your neck here, and it literally is the boss guy. It is in charge of almost every single organ system in our body. So usually that's the culprit of most things, is an underactive thyroid or an overactive. And then we have our adrenal response or our stress response, that our cortisol levels could be affected by something hormonal. Likely could be stress or those go, 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 busy, 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 like I don't stop people. The overachievers and the adrenals are in the toilet. So that's, causing some imbalances too. So it's important to know that the body is working as a whole. And I like to say the endocrine system needs to be in a nice, well orchestrated orchestra playing all on the right tune. And if one is out of tune, the whole thing's going to be off because they all work together. And that's the importance of looking at the body as a whole. So we can see like, well, what's compensating for something else, or, okay, these are hanging on strong, but this needs a lot of support. So we have to fix different areas.
Yeah. And this might be a repetitive question, but as you were talking and explaining all these different hormones, which if people listening, all those hormones kind of, went in one ear and you're like, what in the
Yeah.
world are these things? That's why you have naturopathic doctors, right?
Right.
just ask a professional.
Yep.
But some of the things you mentioned of them being imbalanced, and you mentioned the thyroid specifically, our cortisol levels, aka we're super stressed, which whether you're everything from a stay-at-home mom to whatever your profession may be, I mean, we are generally very stressed people as just a couple of the things to call out. What are other things that can cause hormone imbalances?
Yeah, a big one is our environment and environmental toxins. There's a lot of xenoestrogens, outside estrogens, or like chemicals that can mimic estrogen in the body that can cause imbalances. Pesticides, toxins, things like that contribute to our overall health. Diet is a giant one. So inflammatory foods or not getting enough protein or fiber in the diet is crucial for our hormones and balancing them. So diet plays a giant role. And then we've got lifestyle as far as, are we sleeping? And it's not just sleeping for 3 hours. It's getting good 7-ish hours of sleep and not laying there either, like quality sleep over quantity. And then movement. So are we moving the body? We need to move our lymphatic system. It's movement, especially outdoors, is amazing for the adrenal response and the stress response. So those are some other things that can contribute to the imbalances.
I mean, that makes sense why pretty much every woman you talk to has some sort of issue with their period, whether it's irregular or painful, or because pretty much all of us deal with everything that you just mentioned.
Yep. I mean, we've all been there. I've been there. Yeah, we've all. I don't know. It's very rare for me to see a woman come in that has never been on some sort of contraception. So I think we all have that in common. But it's some people are on it for the wrong reasons, and then it's causing more problems. So we have to address that.
Yeah. So is it possible for people to re-regulate these hormones on their own? Or ultimately what I'm going to get at is what would cause, or what is a reason that you would tell someone is a good reason to start meeting with a naturopathic doctor to help them?
Yeah, you can try doing things on your own, but again, if you don't look at the labs and know exactly what's going on with your body, it becomes a little bit difficult. You can say, oh, it sounds like I have estrogen excess, like too much estrogen, but I wonder what my progesterone level's like. And so that's where the labs will come into play. And you might be, within range or normal, but it's not optimal. And that's my goal, is to achieve optimal health. Also with like the thyroid and some of these symptoms of fatigue and maybe perhaps weight gain, it could be a combination of all three of those systems in the endocrine system, the thyroid, the adrenals, or the sex hormones. So that's where having a professional to run some lab work. I'm a huge proponent of labs, especially with hormones, and seeing exactly where your imbalances is. But if that's not an option for you, there's other resources like books and education that you can read to try and understand like what's going on with your body, and then alternative therapies to help. But yes, it's absolutely possible too. I think it's just how quick do you want that fix and to help your body. A lot of these women are suffering for so long, and because they just accept it as part of their life, and then it gets so bad that it's going to take a while. Hormones don't get balanced overnight. It takes a little bit of time, especially for the women, because we're cycling and we go through a 28-day normal cycle. So these hormones are all over the place. So we've got to embrace them throughout the 28 days. So it's not an overnight fix either. And I think it's unfortunate with our society that we're raised with, we want that quick fix. And that's why we go to the birth control, and that's why we go to the medications, because we want that quick fix. So I always start off by saying it's not going to be overnight, but as long as we're moving in the right direction and trending in the positive direction, we're on our way.
Yeah. I'm so happy you ended with that, because that's exactly what came to my mind. Was we started this off by talking about how it's very common to just be prescribed a pill and you have that bandaid solution, and yeah, it's because we want things to happen quickly, and yeah, it might make you feel better for a short period of time, but for that long-term sustainable benefit, I mean, it's the same thing with everything, with your diet, with if you have a health goal, or it takes time. Nothing that will last you forever is a quick fix.
Exactly. And that's what I try and train people to understand. And then once they do that, they're like, okay, patience is key. So, yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you do? You mentioned lab work. So when someone comes to meet with a naturopathic doctor, because, I mean, another thing that came to my mind too is when people try to self-diagnose, the classic go into WebMD and just everything is the worst case scenario. So there's not good information out there either for people to do research on their own, it seems like.
Right.
So if someone does come to talk to a professional, what does that whole process look like?
Yeah, so I meet with each patient the first time for upwards of 60 minutes. And that's face-to-face with me. You don't see like an MA or a PA or an MP or anyone. It's me right here in front of me for about 60 minutes. And I'm going through your entire health history, because I'm looking at your body as a whole. So I'm seeing what areas might be not balanced or where we really need to focus on. But again, it's all connected. So we're going through every single organ system, what's worked, what hasn't, your lifestyle, your diet, extensive period talk, bowel movement talk, things like that, going over medication supplements that you've tried or that you're on. And then for my women, I usually will have them do lab work after that, so then I know a better understanding of their health to better order the labs, and then I get them timed with your cycle. So hormones, like I mentioned, are recycle, so they're all over the place within the 28 days of our menstrual cycle. So I'm looking at where they're best represented, which is like usually the last half of the cycle on a specific day, like day 19, 20, 21 of the cycle. So we get the labs timed there, and then they go do their labs, they get them drawn, and then we meet back and we go over every single lab and why I ordered it, what it means. My patients actually get a whole document about, like, it's kind of like a lab glossary and a lab interpretation video that they can watch before, so they can go through their own labs, kind of understand what I'm going to be talking about, and that they don't come into that lab review appointment blind, because it can be overwhelming because it's a lot of information, because I'm pretty nosy as far as blood work goes. So I order a lot of blood work. But again, I'm trying to get you to have the most optimal health and really get to that root cause of what's going on. So I have to dig, and I have to, look at the body as a whole. So that's a little bit more lab work than the average patient has ever had in their life. So that's typically the process. And then based off the labs, I provide them a treatment protocol. There's a lot of dietary on there. There's a lot of lifestyle, and then a lot of supplementation, but really focusing on what your body needs. So I don't just throw supplements in there because they're fun. It's like, okay, well, you're deficient in this. You have excess of this. You need a little bit of this. So every treatment protocol, honestly, is different based on every single patient. Like, you probably could go through all of my charts and not find one that's identical, because everyone's unique. And I think that's really cool about naturopathic medicine, is that it's individualized, customized healthcare. Like, it's specific for you and what your body needs. So that's pretty much how the process works here at my practice.
Yeah, I love how you're saying everyone's individualized. It does seem like you go to another doctor and, oh, it seems like this is wrong with you. Take this, and if this doesn't, get rid of your symptoms in a week, make another appointment with me. It's just a very quick in and out. It seems so cut and dry for people.
Right.
Like we said before, you're the detective. So that goes back to, you need to look at everything, because what may normally cause XYZ in one person could be something totally different in another, and you don't know that unless you look at everything.
Exactly. Yep.
So I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball, because this was coming to my mind as we kept talking about all of these things. I'll ask this two ways in case there's a way you prefer. Either, what is the craziest case that you had, like the just most memorable case could be for really, like, you really helped someone, or just someone came in and you were shocked at the things that were going on. Or we could say just like the most profound thing that you've learned about the human body being a naturopathic doctor.
Oh gosh. I could answer both of those like different.
Sure. Yeah.
Gosh, there's one case. One is sticking. There's actually two cases like recently that have happened. And they've come to me for completely different reasons, and things that I thought were going on were completely the opposite. And it wasn't even about periods, which is interesting. One was iron deficiency, and she had low iron. She's trying to get to the root cause of it. Well, come to find out, she has hyperthyroid, overactive thyroid, which is interesting because usually iron deficiency is more common in underactive thyroid. But I've learned in school that nothing is 100% in medicine, so it could be totally different. So that was a really cool diagnosis that she had. She also has crazy high estrogen and not a lot of progesterone. So that was a big issue, which is causing heavy periods, likely causing the iron deficiency. But her body's in like excess, like it's just going, like her thyroid is overactive. So definitely played a role in all of that. And then the other one was actually another hyperthyroid case. And she came to me with, for hormones, menopausal concerns. And then she was like, oh, by the way, I've had this like tremor that just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, well, this is concerning. Like, you don't just get tremors.
Yeah.
Come to find out, she was another hyperthyroid case that was causing the tremor. And then when I met with the other patient, she had a tremor too that she was a little bit concerned about, but that never came up in conversation. And I think it had just developed. So very interesting how looking at the whole body can lead you to a diagnosis that you weren't actually even expecting. Yeah. And then a third one I'll point out was, this just came to me when I was thinking that because I wasn't expecting it either. Another one with hormones, menopausal, she was transitioning care, also was having some emotional like mood disturbances. And we started going through her labs, and her cholesterol was kind of high. Her blood sugar was in the pre-diabetic range. Of course, her hormones were deficient because she was in menopause. She wasn't making any hormones. But then her adrenal or her cortisol function was legit in the toilet. And I talked to her about energy. And I'm like, how tired are you? And she goes, I'm not too bad. Like, I can function. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I think you don't know how good you can feel because you felt so bad for so long. And then we started getting the conversation about craving sweets and craving sugar. And she goes, that's all I'm eating. I'm like, yeah, because that's what you're trying to survive on. Mm-hmm. So she's eating the sugar so she could, for energy, because her adrenal function was in the toilet. So it's interesting and it's fun. I'm your own health detective. So I likely will find other things that weren't even why you came to see me, but it's all connected.
Right.
So those are like 3 fun ones that I've had recently, as far as that. And my women with the coming off the pill or on the pill for acne and still have acne while they're on the pill. I'm like, well, why are you on the pill? Like, you don't need to be on the pill if you don't need to be on the pill. So I'm like, don't worry, your symptoms are going to get worse, but just know that there's an end in sight. And sure enough, like as soon as we heal from inside, their acne is going away. So it's really awesome to hear the success stories and the progression of some patients when they came to me so defeated and hopeless and just like, I don't know what to do. No one can help me, feeling like they're just going to be like this forever. And then hearing that they're a lot better and their lives have improved it's what gets me up every morning.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And even before talking to you, of course, we had a whole season of the podcast, and the whole premise of it was so many people will go to their OB or go get their annual checkups and nothing's wrong with them. So therefore they've got a clean bill of health. That's kind of how we pitch the podcast, but there's so many ways to optimize your health. I mean, I kind of knew that it wasn't normal to have period symptoms, for example, but just to know, like you're saying, some of these things we've experienced and we've just accepted as the norm because we hear everybody else. We've experienced them for so long. We don't think there's any other option out there. We think, well, this is just how it's going to be.
Right.
And that's mind-blowing to know that you probably don't, like you said, you probably don't realize how good you can feel. And that's so sad that that's the reality for so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad there's doctors like you out there.
Right. Me too.
Yeah. And speaking of, if there are people who, I know you're licensed in the state of Arizona, so that's, how the licensing works, have to find someone within your state who is licensed. But if anyone loved what you had to say or wanted to get engaged with you, I know you're active on social media, you have an email list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to share any of that, just so if anyone wants to follow and get more?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a new, it's called the Perfect Period Quiz. So if you are like, oh, I wonder if my period is perfect, you can take my quiz. It's free. You can go to perfectperiod.hopenaturalhealth.com. I'm sure you'll probably put this in the show notes to take that quiz. It's fun. I'm super excited about it. And to date, no one has a perfect period, like to date. So this has been fascinating for me to see these results come in.
And especially to see if you have the perfect period.
Yeah. So I challenge you to take that. And I also have a Master Your Cycle, Embrace Your Hormones course that anyone can take to really learn about their cycle. I think that's another thing that we weren't taught. It was kind of like this period happened once a month, at least for me. Like, it wasn't really talked about when I grew up. It's like, okay, this is what happens. You're going to bleed once a month. Just this is what you do. And that was it. But we can really use our hormones for us and not use them against us. So I teach you how to do that, whether that's, with productivity, with work, with exercise, with diet, and then different ways of, alternatives to birth control, other things you can do to track your cycles, know when it's irregular, what you can do, etc. So there's a whole meal plan. Like, it's a really cool program. So that's available on my social media page. So I'm Dr.Erin Ellis on Instagram, but all my social media links and everything on my website, hopenaturalhealth.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to link your Instagram, your website. All the things that you just mentioned. I'll make sure they're all in the show notes so people can just scroll and click on them to find them. I'm absolutely going to be taking the period quiz.
It's fun. It's so fun. Every time I get a new entry, I'm like, ooh, do they have the perfect period? Like, I might actually send. And don't try and get the perfect period either.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. Like, it's not rare. Maybe my quiz is hard. I don't know, but
it's probably reality, though, right?
Exactly.
Looking at our culture, we get a pat on the back for going above and beyond and overworking ourselves. And
right.
Always been talk about work-life balance, and even like I mentioned, if you are a stay-at-home mom, the stress you get Are you spending enough time with your kids? Are you taking care of the household? Are you supporting? And then the guilt.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that our society puts pressure on us for.
Yep.
And that's just the start of what can cause this domino effect of issues that we need our health detectives to find and figure out.
That's why I'm here.
Yes. I think that's a great note to leave it on. But do you have any parting thoughts or pieces of wisdom that you want to leave us with?
My biggest piece of advice for anyone is that if you know something's off, don't ignore it. And if you're not getting an answer from a doctor, keep looking, keep asking. Your health is important. That was what I went through with my diagnosis. I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't getting an answer, so I just kept asking. I'm like, okay, it's still here. There's something wrong. And then finally I got an answer. Never thought I would get that answer, but you are the advocate of your own health. You know your body best. So if something is not right, if you don't feel right, there's something going on. So there can be an answer. There is hope. So just know that and keep asking and keep trying to get that answer that you deserve.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellis, for coming on the podcast. This was amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.